So I will start the meeting. I'm Michael Pogson. I'm the chair of this committee, the Financial Management Committee of Home Valley Parish Council. Hopefully we're all at the right meeting. And I'd like to welcome you all, and we'll make a start. So normally start with a public question time, where it's an opportunity for members of the public to speak to this committee. And I believe we have some members of the Huddersfield and District Wood Turners who have got an application further down on the agenda, and they may wish to put forward a chat to us about their application. So would one of you has got 3 minutes? Who'd like to speak?
Okay, it's me. Are you?
I think it's Pat to speak.
Oh,
Okay. Thank you, Pat.
Okay. Well, we made an application for a grant to run a special needs day. We were approached by someone who's involved in the Association of Wood Turners of Great Britain, and he was looking for a venue to be able to provide a wood turning taster session for children with special needs and disabilities. And he approached us. He'd approached another club in Yorkshire who hadn't responded, but we were quite interested to get involved because we've already done some work with young people. We've had the Scouts visiting and having a hands-on session a few times prior to the lockdown, of course. So we agreed to host this event, but obviously there are costs involved, and he's keen that we provide a lunch and we make it a really enjoyable experience. And we have 2 groups of children during the day, so we have a morning group and an afternoon group. So not only are they having an experience of wood turning, but they're having an opportunity to meet each other at lunchtime and interact with each other. So we all felt it was a really positive thing to do, but we're not exactly flush with funds, and so any support that we could have would be very gratefully received. And I think he'd spoken to, I think his name's Graham Legg. I thought it was somebody called Paul, but I don't know whether that was you, Paul Dixon, is it? He'd had a conversation anyway with someone who was a counsellor who seemed very supportive and encouraged us to apply. So I don't know whether you have any questions about what we're doing or anything, but.
Okay, we've got a few hands have gone up. Di, did your hand go up? That you waving the paper in the air? I can just try it off camera. Is that a yes? No, that's a no. That's fine. So I've got Councillor Hogley and then Councillor Blacker, I think. So Councillor Hogley first.
Yeah, just a quick question. I just wonder where the event would be held. So obviously you mentioned hire of community hall. Have you got a hall in mind within the Home Valley?
Yes, we operate from Wooldale Community Centre.
Oh, okay.
So it would be held there, and we've got good facilities for any children with disabilities. There's disabled access there, so we felt it was a good venue.
Okay, that's super. Thank you for that.
Thank you. Councillor Blacker.
Yes, well, Pat's answered what was one of my questions, which was what is the AWGB? So now I know.
All right.
And then Councillor Hogley asked one of my other questions. But my last question, first of all, I just want to say this seems to me like an excellent idea. It is what's kind of split of the young people? I think it's a great idea to bring them together. So is it kind of 50-50 Home Valley or Huddersfield, or roughly?
Oh, at the moment, we don't know. Because we've yet to approach people, and obviously the children will have to be, well, not chosen, but they will have to have appropriate disabilities for doing what we're doing. So Graham is planning to approach. He's his experiences as a head teacher. And he's already done this kind of work in a school in Derbyshire. So his plan is to approach the closest schools for children with special needs to Wooldale to begin with, and kind of see what uptake we get. So that's our plan for getting a group of suitable young people, really.
Councillor Dixon.
How many people do you have at each of these events?
Well, we've decided that we can probably only accommodate 8 each time, because we've got 8 or possibly 10, I'm thinking. Peter might correct me, but in the past, when we've worked with the Scouts, we've got 5 lathes that we can use, and so we've had pairs of children, one watching, one doing something. But we felt with these children, probably we needed just to have one child at a time. So that limits us to probably 10 in the day.
Yeah. It concerns me that we don't have a group of people in the Home Valley that this would represent. It's possibly that they can come from well outside the Home Valley, but the Home Valley provides the venue for the operation.
Yeah, I take your point. I think
it's difficult. I think the person that will be the councillor will be Paul Davis. That he's the councillor for Wooldale, I think.
Yeah.
And that will probably be a councillor that's.
Yes.
It isn't me that's been involved. I haven't had any word with anybody.
No.
It's just if with people coming from a long way away, how are they going to get here? Are we going to have to transport? Are you going to pay for transport as well?
Well, the presumption is that the children would be brought by their parents, and I think we identified about 5 special needs schools, and I'm not off the top of my head able to tell you which ones, but quite local, Honley, I think, and those were the ones that we thought, you know, we were probably going to target first.
I think they're more likely to be further afield.
Well, yeah, it's difficult to know really, because we don't have a central contact point for, you know, there isn't a group of children that we know of, because we're presenting the opportunity rather than finding a need and then providing something for it, if that makes sense. So it's a bit difficult. You know, we haven't got a group of people like the Scouts who've said in the past, can we come and do wood turning? What we're saying is, well, we'll provide the opportunity. We think it would be a really good thing for some children with special needs, and it will depend on their disabilities and the difficulties they have, whether they can access it or not. So it's hard to define where they come from, but we try and choose people who are quite local.
Okay, I think one of the issues that Paul's sort of touching on really for us, just to make you aware, and it'll become part of our discussions later on, is that as a parish council, we can only fund things to the betterment of the constituents of Home Valley Parish Council. Yeah. Now we recognise that you will be exploring people local too and what have you, and I appreciate that there are special needs children at many of the major schools, you know, many of the actual schools around in the Home Valley. They're not just at special needs schools. So yeah, I can see where you're coming from, but I just wanted to put some context around Paul Dixon's valid comments that we will have to have something in our discussion.
Yeah.
Is that okay? So what we'll do is the grants, we'll bring that up in the agenda. I'll just go through some formalities first through the rest of the agenda items and what have you. Then we'll get the applications and you'll be able to hear our deliberations then and the outcome, if that's okay.
That's absolutely fine. Thank you.
Okay. Just to know, going forward, we are moving to a method kind of program where we will be only hearing grant applications 2 times in the year. That's from April 2021. However, I have noted that your application was dated in March, and therefore I'm quite happy to hear it on this occasion and go forward. But in the future, well, just forewarned is forearmed. Our grants will be on a twice a yearly basis, and we'll be looking at all grants in the round and see which ones are the best, rather than, does that make it, going forward a grants panel? But I just think it's best to just make you aware of that. Okay, so moving on from public question time. Public Bodies Admissions to Meetings Act 1960, amended by Openness of Local Government Bodies Regulation 2014. As a local and parish council, meetings can now be recorded. The chairman to check if anybody wishes to record the meeting to ensure reasonable facilities can be provided. As the meeting is a virtual meeting, the officer will be recording the meeting for upload to the parish council's YouTube channel. Is everybody okay with that? I'm taking that as a yes. To accept apologies from absence, I think we've got apologies from Councillor Sweeney, Councillor Greaves, Councillor Davis has kindly given his apologies for his lateness arrival, and welcome, Paul. And then Liz also given an apology for being late, but actually she was on time. I've no further apologies. Has anybody else? No. Okay, then to receive members and officers' personal disclosure will procure interest in items on the agenda. No. Let's consider a request for DPI dispensations.
We've got none.
No. To consider whether items on the agenda should be discussed in private session. Anyone? No. So I will now bring the grants forward. If everybody's okay with that, bringing the grants forward to this, and we'll take, so 21-2207, item 2, to consider the grant application for Huddersfield and District Wood Turners application enclosed. £500 for wood turning craft day for young people from the Home Valley and Huddersfield with special educational needs and disabilities towards room hire, lunch, equipment, travel. The legal power of this will be section 137 of the Local Government Act 1972. Would anyone like to speak on forward of that? Paul?
With it being an event in the Home Valley, I feel that it'd be better if we had people from the Home Valley, but I'm not against this operation. And what I would propose is that, as a gesture, the Home Valley provide the accommodation, and we pay for the accommodation, and that only, and we'll make a grant for that amount. Whatever the cost of the hall is, that is the amount that we could give as custodians of the Home Valley, and I think it will be a valid point. I'm not against the people, I'm not against what they're doing, I think it's a good thing, but if we could do one thing for them, that would provide the accommodation.
Thank you for that, Paul. Have we got anyone else, Councillor Blacker?
Just first of all, I couldn't find any financial information about the organisation on the form. I don't know whether I've missed it or what. But I understand it's really difficult when you're opening up an opportunity and you don't know who you're going to get. But I mean, my assumption would be that there would be young people from the Home Valley, not necessarily from special schools either, but some of the mainstream schools from the Home Valley who would greatly benefit from this, and they'd also benefit from spending time with young people from elsewhere as well. So my feeling is it's a modest amount that we should support this in full.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Blacker. Councillor Hugley?
Yeah, I think I would second Councillor Blacker's proposal, because I think given what's been explained as to how the children are going to be identified, I think there are sort of best endeavours to seek people from Home Valley schools, and to be honest, most people who would take that opportunity are probably not going to travel vast distances. They're more likely to be people who are offered the opportunity to live within not too far from us. So given it is a modest amount, and it is it's a contribution towards the event, we're not paying for the entire event, so I don't think we should feel uncomfortable about the fact that potentially not all the people there will be from the Home Valley. And I think it's a good cause to support. But I would just ask the deputy clerk or clerk as appropriate, I don't know, just to confirm whether they received the financial.
Yes, they did.
Okay.
I was just having a look at them, and their income for the last year was only about 5,000, and their expenses were similar. So they don't have a lot of money. Is that fair to say? Yeah. And that information, of course, went to the chairman.
Yes. Yeah. From looking at the accounts, it looks that they run on a subsistence basis. They spend what they get in and they raise their fees accordingly. So if the fees go up, if their costs go up, I suppose their fees to their members would go up accordingly, and they run to just cover their costs. I think this is a great event that, you know, I think it's great that they're taking this opportunity to try and encourage other people and people with special needs, especially, to take up wood turning. I think it's a great idea. I do note from the, as I explained earlier, regarding our limitation to funding things within the parish, but they've explained that they are looking at schools. We'll be starting at the schools closer to home, and that the funding for it in total, there is some funding will be external to the parish council. So I suppose, as Councillor Hogley said, that's where it goes. So, unless anybody else wants to speak, I think we have a proposal from, sorry, Councillor Davis.
Yeah, it's only to mention, I suppose this is not an interest, but as a ward councillor, we were also approached for support. So we have provided some support as ward councillors, but that doesn't impact this application. It's just for you to be aware that certainly felt that this was, you know, something which was worthwhile supporting, and that went through our normal grant process as ward councillors as well. So
you'd like to declare that you assisted some of your parishioners with a grant application, but other than that, you have no further interest in the Huddersfield and District Turners?
None whatsoever. No.
Thank you. Yep. Okay, so we have a proposal from Councillor Dixon that we fund to a value of £100. Was that seconded by anyone? Does anyone second Councillor Paul Dixon's proposal? I'm not seeing anyone seconding that, so unfortunately, Paul, that's not gone forward. We have a supplementary proposal from Councillor Hogley, I believe, that we fund the full £500 amount. Do we have a seconder for that proposal? Councillor Blacker has seconded that. So we'll move that to a vote. All those in favour of supporting this for the full £500 requested? I would say that motion is being carried. Thank you all very much. And we'd like to wish you good luck with the event, and we look forward to hearing from you and hearing that it was a great success. Thank you. Thank you for your attendance.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, going back to the agenda as normal, we have item 21/22/06 to confirm the minutes of the previous committee meeting. Has everyone had a chance to see those?
You're not taking the other grant application, Michael, at this time?
I think we'll just finish off the formalities first, and then we'll go to the other grant application, if that's okay.
Right,
Otherwise,
okay.
we'll forget about it and we'll come back to the minutes.
Okay.
Is that okay with everybody? Okay, then. So going back to the minutes of the previous meeting, which I believe were agreed at full. Have we previously agreed at full council? Am I right there, Clerk?
Can't remember, actually. I don't remember the last full council was.
Have we had one since the 1st of March?
I don't think we have. Have we?
Yeah.
Got the wrong list, sorry.
We had full council on the 22nd of March, so we must have.
Oh, right. Okay, then we
Yes.
have, yeah.
So these must have been approved, which I'm guessing they have been approved. Has anyone got anything? Has everybody seen them? Is everyone okay with them? Are they not to be noted? Okay, note those minutes. So now we're back on to 21/22/07, item 1, to consider an application from Honey Business Association, application enclosed 1,000 towards Honey Open Gardens event towards shuttle bustles, market and brochure. Legal power for this will be section 137 of the Local Government Act 1972. Has everybody seen this grant application? Has anyone got any comments? Councillor Blacker.
I think Councillor Dixon was probably first.
Oh, sorry, I do apologise. Thank you.
No problem. Ladies first.
Yeah, Thanks, Paul. Yeah, I was just a bit disappointed in this one to note that in the box for sustainability there was a remark of not applicable. I feel perhaps you might have tried a little bit harder with that, because there is some guidance which is referred to next to that box. I think we ought to perhaps, given our declaration of climate emergency, perhaps to be picking up on these things.
Thank you for that. And Councillor Dixon?
I think Honley Village Trust are pushing the luck. They've had plenty of grants and they've had plenty of money. This purpose that they're looking for here, I've looked at this and I'm not sure just whereabouts it is that the event's going to take place. But if it's anywhere within Honley, where do we need the shuttle buses from?
Okay, I think I can put a little bit of light on the event as far as I'm aware. There's some people who have, 15 people who have so far who have homes with a rather nice garden within the environs of Honley.
Yeah.
Are willing to open those gardens to visitors on the 3rd and 4th of July. Now, some people will be able to walk around the village and visit all these gardens, and for I think they will be charging a fee, and people will be able to walk around all these gardens and look at them and appreciate them, and it would be quite a nice event. Some people would not be able to walk all the way around Honley, and so as not to have them disadvantaged and not able to attend this event, I think they're proposing a shuttle bus to go around and drop and ferry people between the 15 different homes. That's my understanding. So unfortunately, there's no one here to discuss that. But does that answer your query, Paula, regarding the shuttle bus?
Not quite. I remember a few years ago they were raising money for Hepworth Church, and they did gardens around Hepworth. And they came up as far as our place at Jackson Bridge. Somebody just up the road from us opened the gardens. And to be quite honest, if somebody's going walking around the garden, they should be able to walk from one to the other in my book. And you haven't satisfied my reason for needing a shuttle bus. It's obviously that people like myself that have struggled to walk would do. But if I was going from one to the other, I'd use a car.
I'm very fortunate you are to have the use of a car, Paul. Anybody else like to speak? Councillor Lacker?
Yeah, I'm a bit. You might be able to help here, Chair, but I'm a bit confused about these organisations, because there seem to be 3 different named organisations. So on our agenda, it says Honley Business Association, but on the form it says Friends of Honley, and then in brackets part of Honley Village Community Trust. Are we talking here about one organisation? Are we talking about several? And obviously they've listed grants which have been given to different organisations with different names. So yeah, some clarity would be welcome.
It does state on the application that the Friends of Honley are working with the Friends of Honley Library and the Honley Business Association regarding this event. But Pat Collins, have you got further to contribute?
The Friends of Honley are just a little group that do a specific thing within the Village Trust. The Village Trust does loads. It does, Magdale Fields and all sorts. The Friends of Honley are the ones that, the dominant thing they do is pick up the litter every now and then they go around. So they're not a separate organisation. They're like a little subcommittee, if you like, the Friends of Honley. I don't know about the library's involvement. I didn't know the library was involved.
I'm only reading what it says on their application, Pat.
It's not a very satisfactory application. I think
it's not. I was hoping
they've dusted it out as quickly as they could without.
I was hoping someone was here. One of my queries is that it says it's going to be a biannual event, and they're hoping to raise £10,000 through this, through running this event. Now, I wish them all the luck with it. If they, but if they're going to, are they going to come back in another 2 years and say, we did such a great time last time, can we have some more money towards it? Because if this is kind of something they're looking to do biannual and they're wanting some startup funding to get the first one off the road and then look to be self-sustaining then going forward, I would be much more supportive of it. You know, I think I would be quite supportive of it. Unfortunately, they're not here to answer that kind of query from me. If this is something they're going to raise the money, spend the money, and come back to us for kickstarting of it again every year and what have you, I've got sustainability issues around the event. Councillor Dixon has got his hand up again. Thank you, Councillor Dixon.
What I would like to propose, Michael, in the circumstances, if we're going to give them a kickstart and we're going to do something, the £250 towards the marketing, I'm happy with. £250 towards the brochure, I'm happy with. The shuttle bus, I'm not happy with. And I would propose that in this instance, that we give them £500, which is a kickstart, and gives them something to be going on with. If they need to have a shuttle bus to take people around, well, I would like to think that that could be funded by the people themselves.
Okay, Councillor Hogley.
To be honest, I'd second what Councillor Dixon's just proposed, because I think, given the sort of lack of information on the grant form, obviously I don't want us to defer it, because I can see the benefit of the event.
Complicated.
It would, yeah. So I'd like to support the event, but I echo Councillor Dixon's concerns about the shuttle buses, and I think actually there's ways around it as well, because people could offer to drive as volunteer drivers for people. I think there's ways they could get around that if that really is a problem for them in terms of allowing people to transport between them. I mean, I know I've attended open garden things in other parts of the country, to be honest, which are, and often they're spread out, but people can arrange to, you know, you take someone with you when you go, you know, there's ways in which they could get around it. So I just think, given the quality of the application and the lack of someone coming to sort of make a really robust case, I think the £500 is appropriate.
Okay, before we move to vote, has anyone got any further comments or even amendments? Councillor Colling?
Can we just, in our response to them, suggest that they take a bit more care with the application next time? There are ways of being sustainable and all that sort of thing. In a tactful phrase, I don't know how we do it, but
can I suggest, if they'd like to discuss their application further, they can approach the chair of the committee and get in touch with me and have a discussion why we deliberated and came about where we were. I'm just trying to save the clerk a bit of work here. Would everyone be okay with that as instead, Pat?
Yeah.
I suggest that's a very good noble offer, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah. Is the clerk okay with that?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Okay then. So we've no amendments to that proposal. We have by Councillor Dixon that we fund to the tune of £500. All those in favour? Thank you very much. That's definitely carried. Thank you very much for that. Moving on the agenda, we now get to item 212208, account for payments. Has everyone had the papers and everyone had a chance to see where we are? Has anyone got any comments on the payments to be made? Okay, item 1 to note, the chairman of council has not used any of the chairman's allowance during her term of office so far. We may be discussing this later on down the agenda. The chairman, not Councillor Hogley's lack of spending of it, but where we are with it regarding the audit further down the chairman's allowance in itself. Item 2, to approve the remaining transaction of the month-to-date scheduled payments for March. This is retrospective. Has everybody seen that? Is everybody okay with that? Okay, this is to approve. So have we got someone to move it? Councillor Hogley, Councillor Dixon second it, and do we all approve? All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you. And then item 3, to approve the transaction for the upcoming schedule of payments April, which is item F. I've got Councillor Hogley. Is this a comment? Would you like to?
Sorry, I was just going to make one quick comment, which is
Please.
where it says Gabrielle Hunt, it should say Gabrielle Hurt, which is the secretary for the land charity.
Okay. Is that the £100 for the freedom of information?
Yeah.
Okay, if the clerk could if the RFO could just amend that, that would be great. Thank you. I'm sure it's just a slight slip of the finger on a typo. Okay, so do we have someone to move that, approving those and with that amendment? Got Councillor Davis and Councillor Dixon. All those in favour? Okay, 21-2209 financial statements to approve the accounting summaries, copies enclosed. So we have item I for February 2021. Rather than go through them all individually, is everybody okay if I take February and then March for the approval? So has everybody seen the documents for February, the bank reconciliation, the cash books, all accounts, receipts, payments, the trial balance, detailed income expenditure, budget heading, the cash investment reconciliation and earmarked reserves? That's item 1 to 6 for February to approve those. Have we got someone to move? Got Councillor Hogley and then Councillor Blacker to second it. All those in favour?
Well done, Richard.
Thank you very much. Yes. And then number 2 for March 2021. Again, 1 is bank reconciliations, 2 cash books, 3 trial balances, 4 detailed income expenditure, budget heading, 5 cash investment reconciliations and 6 earmarked reserves. Have we got someone to move? Sorry, I'm rushing through these. Has anyone got any comments on them before we move to a vote? Okay, no comments. So I think Councillor Hogley was quite willing to move those. Have we a seconder? Councillor Blacker, all those in favour to approve? Thank you very much indeed. Item 2022-10, preparation for final accounts. To note this year only, the final accounts are being prepared by Altus. This will take place after an online meeting on the 28th of the 5th, 2021. The RFO2 report.
Well, I'm just reporting on the next bit really about the this kind of end of year paperwork we have to submit. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of all written down there already for you, to be honest, but I just thought I'd sort of say this to you because I think we've only been one of these slightly larger councils for a couple of years, but it does affect the way you submit your accounts. Under a traditional receipts and payments system, basically when the 31st of March ends, you just kind of draw a line in the sand and that's your financial position. You don't really have to do anything else. Because we're a larger council, we have to do all this kind of accounting money backwards and forwards to make sure that it's in the year that it applies to. So there's these 4 specific bits of accounting paperwork where I've got to submit to Realtas, which should give us an accurate position of where we were in terms of spending which was meant to be spent in last year is in last year, and spending which was meant to be spent in this year is accrues to this year, and the same with payments in advance and the same with receipts in advance. It's a bit of a messy process, but I think I've sorted it all. And I know you've not really been in a position to work your way through it yourselves, but I think I've got it. I think I've got it right. So it's to approve, but you are relying in a sense on me getting it right, I think.
Okay. It does say to consider approval of these year-end records, IL, for inclusion in our account and submissions. I consider that we should approve as the chair, but Councillor Hogley?
I'm happy to approve them, but I just had a quick question, which is just with our debtors. Obviously, one of them is the tenant at Monty's Loft, and I just wonder when we, this is just a sort of interest point really, where given we're asking them for a rebate on the electricity bills that they incurred, what terms do we give them for how quickly are we asking for that to be paid back? Will we see it coming into next month's income, or have we given them a longer period of time?
Has anyone to report? Do we know?
Are you asking me or Rich?
Either, whoever's put the request in, yeah.
I don't think we've set any guidelines, have we, Rich?
I mean, I'm surprised they've not paid us yet for the, it was something I was going to bring up when we're talking about tenants later. I was a bit surprised that they've not paid anything towards the electricity bill yet. So, I mean, it doesn't really affect these forms because we don't actually have to have received the money yet. As long as we get it at some point during next year, it will still be okay in terms of the accounts paperwork. That's not we don't need the money now. I'm just a little worried that we haven't seen the money, we haven't heard from them yet. So yeah, I do have a slight concern.
Okay, so that's something that we need to follow up at some point, aren't we? I think we would be quite generous over the terms, provided we knew, we got an intention and something. Basically, we need to know that we're going to get the money, don't we? Do we know how much is? Did we agree a formula of how much they would owe us?
I mean, they pay for they pay for their usage, basically. They pay for what they use.
Because they have a meter, don't they?
Yeah.
Can I just pause the meeting 1 minute to find my charger? Otherwise, I will disappear and I just need to plug myself in. Give me 2 seconds. Sorry about this.
Chair,
Sorry, I do apologise about that little hiatus. Councillor Hogley.
Chair, yeah, can I just follow up on that? So just because Monty's got the £342.25, which is still lowest. That was the bit from a while back. That doesn't include the latest electricity, does it? So since sending that to them, have we had any communication back? Because it feels as if it would be responsible for us to A, check they had it, and B, to say we're happy for it to be paid over the next, well, if we can have it during the only have to have it during the year. If they need to pay it off at over 6 months, then that's we can live with that, but we need reassurance that it's not just going to sit there as a bad debt.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we know if they're open and trading in the moment?
They are open now, yeah.
Okay. So would anyone be okay? Would it be okay if I pop down and put that to them on Saturday morning, do you think, or when they're open, or do you think that would be a bit untoward going in their business hours?
I think I ought to talk to her first, because I've not had any follow-up for this bill, and it's fair enough. I mean, I didn't know she hadn't paid it, so I think I should talk to her first.
I have to be fair, I haven't checked in the last week, so it may have happened. I'll check tomorrow, Liz.
Okay.
So if the IFL could report back to the clerk, and then the clerk could have a word with them, but if you can pass on the feelings that we would be okay so long as we get some terms and some intention of paying, we would be, that we're more concerned about that than the lack of money. We just want to make sure that we get it within the next financial year, I suppose.
Yeah.
Is everyone okay with that on that item? It's a little bit off agenda, but back onto the agenda as such. Where were we?
Mr. Chairman,
Councillor Dixon.
I'm quite happy in the circumstances to do what you've suggested. I don't think it's a good thing that the council admits to giving too much credit. Otherwise, everybody might seem to want the same application. I think in the circumstances, I think it's sad that these people have had to close, and that you're going to do what's right by them. And I think if Liz speaks to them and then comes back to you and lets you know the situation, then you can pass it on. But too much credit is not a good thing.
Noted, Councillor Dixon. I quite agree. Okay, so back to the to consider approval of these year-end records IL for inclusion in our annual account submissions. Do we have a proposer for that? Councillor Hogley, Councillor Dixon, all those in favour? We are going to approve them, I think. Yep, thank you very much. Okay, then we're to 2022-11 banking matters, banking mandates. To note, the mandates for Handelsbanken have been updated. New mandatees are Councillor Blacker, Councillor Councillor Hogley. I nearly sort of did a hybrid of us then. Councillor Pogson and the clerk. Is everybody okay with that? That's just a note.
Yeah.
Some nodding heads, that's great stuff. And then 2, the mandates for HSBC are still to do. So we still need to do the Hong Kong.
I think what you've got, the understanding we've got here is we leave it till the next when the new council's put in and the new committee chairman and his name's put down then. So leave it till then, I think.
That's the proposal that we have. Is there any reasoning why we urgency to do it before then, by anyone?
Everybody's still,
Everyone's
all
okay with that, so
all the mandated people are still members, so that it's not a problem. It still stays within the council.
So are we okay to carry that over until the next committee's drawn up on this committee, and we go from there? Get some thumbs up. So that's what we've decided. Yeah. Okie doke. Item 21, 22, 12 tenancies. RFO to report.
Well, we have covered aspects to do with Monty's Loft already. I did wonder about when they're going to start paying from in terms of their rent. Has that been agreed by CASC? Was that agreed when the lockdown started? I don't suppose it would have, would it? How are we going to work out when are we just going from when the shop reopened?
That would seem reasonable.
We know when that was?
No, I don't know exactly, but again, I can ask her when she opened.
Okay.
Is this a decision for us or CASC?
It is really, yeah, it is really, because it was CASC who agreed to waive the rent during lockdown. So really, it's up to them.
We didn't have any agreement. We didn't have any terms about when it would restart or anything because nobody knew.
Okay.
Yeah.
Can I put Councillor Hogley?
I was just going to say that said, CASC isn't meeting for another 3 weeks, and I think it's important our tenant is aware of, because otherwise we'll end up backdating a month's rent. And that, given the conversation we've just had about being reasonable, I don't really see why we couldn't take that decision now. I mean, I recognise it's a tenant because ultimately they're a tenant for the council. I know CASC manages the toilets and made the decisions about the tenant, but that said, I think it's important that we give notice that if the rent is going to start again from when did everything open? It was the 7th. When was it? Last Monday, wasn't it? Then I think we ought to notify them if we're going to start from then, or indeed start from today, or something like that.
Okay, given that the clerk is already going to be speaking to them regarding the electricity bill, can we ask that the clerk, well, first of all, I would put a recommendation to the chair of the CASC committee that you, Finance and Management Committee would recommend that they start paying from when they reopened. And I'm guessing that's the when was it they opened again? Was it 16th of April or something, was it? I'll have a look.
I think the law allowed it from the 12th, didn't it?
12th, yes, you're right. The law allowed them from the 12th. So can I recommend, can this committee recommend that CASC charges them rent from when they reopen, namely the 12th, or a other day if they can demonstrate that they opened later than the 12th? Does that sound?
Yeah. Yeah.
So we would make that recommendation, and then the clerk to know that when she's having her discussions with them, that that's the recommendations that will be put forward, and we're expecting rent from when they reopened. Does that sound clear? Does everybody understand that? Is everyone okay with that? Do we need to vote on that, or is that just a thing that we've noted, an action that we're going forward?
Probably a good idea to vote on it.
Okay, well, does everyone understand what I've just said?
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm glad there's a recording of this. Okay. Would someone like, I'll propose that. Does anyone want to second that? Councillor
Subject to CASC's approval.
Yeah, subject to CASC's approval. Okay. All those.
I think I don't want to step on their toes, Michael.
No, but I think part of that we're only making a recommendation, but notifying them
I'm
about
relatively confident that CASC will approve of it.
Okay, so Councillor Colling is saying that she's got CASC in her pocket. Okay, let's move on.
Hey, we can't be doing with this. We don't want these here people doing all this.
This meeting is being recorded, Councillor Pogson. You might want to rephrase that.
Okay, rephrase that. Yeah.
And then,
What do you want rephrasing? The word about something about pockets?
The
Yes,
pocket.
I retract my statement and apologise to anybody who may have been offended.
Depends how big a pockets are.
Yeah.
and then with regards to the other tenancies, we've had the payments have come in from everybody except for one garage in Honley, which is the same one who was late last year. Sent the first letter asking for the money last week. Last year it took 2 or 3 letters, I think. I can't remember, but that's basically where we're at. We've got all the money apart from one £200 garage bill.
Okay, thanks for that, Rich. If you just keep us updated, and when we get it, that'd be great. Okay, so that moves on for anything with tenancies, I believe. Oh no, we're on to the manager of water lane appointments is responsible for the financial management committee. However, there is currently no budget for allotments or the site. One of the allotments users has drawn the parish council attention to a minor disrepair of a dry stone wall at the allotment. The maintenance contractor has submitted a quote. Have we all seen the quote? Yeah. It's a bit awkward, isn't it? Because we, as a committee, we have in our budget, the money comes in because we receive but we don't have anything for the maintenance or the upkeep. It's a bit of a kind of crazy situation. Anyway, Councillor Dixon.
Is it our wall? The question I ask is it our wall? Is it our responsibility?
That's a good question. I haven't looked
Does the wall belong to us or to the landowner at the other side?
I don't know. I haven't looked into that.
Who is the landowner at the other side?
I don't know.
Don't know.
Has the wall been pushed down by animals in the field at the other side of the wall, do you think?
It's a very minor.
If that's the case, then it's possibly not our problem. If it's only a minor defect, why this tenant hasn't cobbled it back up himself, I don't know why.
Well, he put in he just was concerned that the tenancy agreement says that you will keep your patch in good repair, and he said, does it include the wall? Which is why I asked for the quotation, because I thought if we're going to discuss it, we need to know how much is involved, and that's as far as I went. I didn't actually look to see whether we owned the wall. I just assumed we did, so we need to check that first.
How much was the quote, Michael? I haven't. I've got it in my papers, but I haven't just.
£190, I believe.
£90.
190, is that right?
190.
£190, I believe it was. First of all, I'd like to say, it's minor? I believe it's minor damage, and we don't believe that it's in a situation where it's going to fall down and cause any further damage at this moment in time.
Yeah, that's right.
So currently, it's not an actual matter of urgency just at this moment. So we could possibly look and do a bit further investigation. Councillor Davis.
Yeah, it actually says in the quotation, doesn't it, that repairing damaged section part way up the left-hand side where the wall appears to have been clipped by a vehicle. So I assume by a vehicle the other side of the wall to the allotments. So I think it just again goes back to Councillor Dixon's point of, you know, whose wall is this and what's on the other side. If that's, but how John knows that, I don't know, but that's what he's got in the quote.
I think for me, we seem to be in a situation, aren't we, where it's whose wall is it?
Yeah.
Then who clipped it? If it's been clipped by a vehicle, who clipped it, and should they be responsible? But then we get into a point of view of if it's not going to fall down immediately, I suppose we can invest a bit of time in looking for it. But how much time do we invest in looking at it before we've run up £190 of staff's time trying to find out who's responsible, who's not responsible, and chasing that up with the people who own it to 190. Anyway, Councillor Hogley.
I think there's kind of 2 points. One is how we fix the current damaged wall, which we'll come back to in a minute. But the other one is about setting aside. It seems sensible to have some sort of contingency budget within F&M to cover these issues when they arise. I mean, looking at home allotments, obviously there are several walls, so it depends which wall that's being talked about. But we would need to look at our deeds, would we not, which are in one of those cabinets that we were looking at the other week, Liz and Rich, which would presumably also indicate what the boundaries were and whether that includes the walls. Because if it's the wall that's next to the pub, then you could just ask the pub, is that your wall or is that our wall? If it's the one next to the road, then it's probably, if we don't take responsibility for it, then nobody else will. So at £190, I think we should sort of approve the principle of spending it, but obviously we can't spend it until we've approve the principle of spending it, subject to an initial confirmation that it seems likely it is ours, and then have to only be able to actually spend that money and get the work done when we've had the money vied at the next full council, if they approve viring it. So that gives us a bit of time just to do a quick check, because yes, you're right, it could take oodles of time if you get too carried away, but it's just checking what deeds do we have, is there a simple answer to it. If there's any ambiguity, I think we just have to pay for it and fix it. It's better to get it fixed than it fall down and then be more expensive.
Thanks for that valid contribution there, Councillor Hogley. Councillor Dixon.
I'd like to just come back. If you're going to be looking at the deeds, do you know what you're looking for on a plan?
No.
What it should show, if the plan is correct, it will put an inward T. And if it's an inward T going our way, it's our wall. If it's a T going the other way, it's the wall belonging the other side. I thought I'd better just let you know that, and then it saves you having to go through the documents to see anything that might prescribe. If we do mend this wall, it leaves us open to mend every wall around there if it's necessary. If the tenants are supposed to keep the things good and proper and tidy, aren't the walls their responsibility?
I suppose it will be depend on the tenants' allotment agreement and how that's worded, I suppose. But I think thank you for that very valid contribution there, Councillor Dixon. Hopefully, if we can dig the deeds out, that will be very helpful. Councillor Colling.
I think there's a big difference between keeping your allotment decent and tidy and in good nick and mending dry stone walls around the perimeter. I'm not sure.
I tend to agree with you, Councillor Colling. Say this was a manufactured brick wall, solid brick wall. Would you expect the tenant to, rebuild the wall?
Mm.
And if it has been clipped by a road traffic vehicle, is that the allotment owner's fault? The allotment, the allotment tenant's fault that it got clipped by a car and I've got to repair the wall? I think that,
If the wall's down, and some animals climb over it, and start doing damage in the allotments, who's going to be responsible for that? Are we going to be responsible as the wall owners, or is the landowner at the other side whose animals have got in? Because I would think that is the problem.
Well, it says it's been clipped by a car in the report.
Yes, I know, but what I'm saying is that because the wall is now substandard, it isn't stock proof and lets animals into the allotments. That's where the problems arise.
Looking from the picture, it doesn't look like it's a field the other side. It looks like it's a car park and garages to me. But noted, Councillor Dixon.
I can't. It's that long since I went up and walked around there that I was thinking there was a small paddock at the other side. That's all. Yeah.
The picture of the wall where it's damaged does show that it's road and garages the other side, Councillor Dixon. Councillor Blacker.
I mean, I'm just a bit concerned really about the health and safety aspects of this. I just think it needs to go ahead and be mended. I mean, it doesn't look as though it's on the verge of collapse, but once they breach dry stone walls, then they can quickly, the rest of it can quickly go. So, and it's a modest amount. I just think we should have it done and perhaps then explore whether there's a possibility of getting this 190 quid back from somewhere else.
I'm looking at that. I've just realised that there's a picture in the minutes, and well, it doesn't look a problem to me. That I don't know. It hasn't fallen down, has it?
Not yet.
So it doesn't need rebuilding, because if you start taking it down, you'll need to address many yards either side.
Councillor Colling.
I think with dry stone walls in particular, if you don't mend them, people come and steal the stones very quickly, and before long you've got no wall.
Okay, I would have John Ford, Master Dry Stone Waller, who has given us his quote and his assessment of it and what have you. And I'm quite, you know, so regarding the wall itself, I'm quite happy to go by what he says rather than have not visited in it and you know, there we are. But I think we are.
I think they're being very conscious, our tenants, if they're worried about the wall when it's like that. I wouldn't, if it was my wall, I wouldn't. There's walls to fields that we rent, and there are sight worse than that.
I don't think they're worried about the safety. They were just inquiring about whether they were responsible for rebuilding them.
Okay. my worries about making the tenants responsible for it always means also what's the standard of build if they just decide to muck in and do it themselves? It could do more harm than good. Would be one of the concerns. Going back to Rachel Hogley's, Councillor Hogley's proposal, I think there were 3 points there, wasn't there, if I can remember rightly. One was, currently we have no budget to do this with, so we'd have to go to the full council to get environment. Yeah, if we were to do this, we'd have to get environment from full council. Where we would via that money from, I don't know, so that would mean having a chat with the RFO at a later date and discussing that, how we would get environment and where we'll get that environment from to fund this. Item 2 would be, should we have a budget for these kind of maintenance repairs within finance and management ongoing, just in case these things, you know, a modest budget, whether we just need to stick something in the pot that sits there, or it needs to be a yearly budget. I'm not too sure. I don't think it really needs to be a yearly budget, but we need some money there to access the funds to do it, whether that's a sum in earmarked reserves or whatever. So that's a point that needs to be discussed and sort of reconciled. And then the third one is it us to do it? You know, or the finding, you know, whose responsibility is it, with a quick look at the deeds without investing too much of our officers' valuable time? So those are the 3 things put forward by Rachel Hogley. Am I correct there? Is there anything else? I'm hoping that's
yeah, it was fine. Yeah.
That's fine. So are we okay? Do we need to vote on going ahead with that as a means forward?
I think, Mr. Chairman, with the state of the wall as it is, if we were to do a repair on that, I think every other person who has a bit of wall connected to their allotments will be expecting similar treatment and a Rolls-Royce job doing every year. And at that stage, we'll be out of pocket with the rent we get from the allotments. And as it's not in a state of damage to anybody or health and safety, I would leave it well alone and forget about it for the time being.
I am very, very reluctant to say leave it for the time being when we've got a report of a damage to a wall and I've got a 2D picture of it, which that's what I'm going on my basis of making a judgment to leave it well alone. Councillor Dixon, I'm a little bit reluctant to go on that on the basis of this one picture, you know, and I don't know much about dry stone walls myself. Councillor Hogley.
I was just going to say, I was just having a look at our budget table thing, and there's repairs and maintenance budget line, which is 4230. I don't know what that's ordinarily used for. We've obviously used it for something because there's as it would happen, £190 written in the amounts, which is a bit weird, because that's the figure we're now talking about.
It's normally used for office equipment repairs. You know, it's when we've had to do repairs to computers and so on, rather than this kind of
external things.
I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying it can't be used. I'm just saying that we haven't used it traditionally for that purpose.
Okay, I'm just conscious that, you know, we do have a contingency line item that's again item 4299, which is £3,000. I don't think it's unreasonable for us to say, actually, in this instance, £190 is appropriate to be wired from that contingency into the F&M.
For a wall that's been damaged and is a potential risk.
Yeah, that sum of money, I think.
I think it's a run for his own backs.
That contingency.
If we let this happen, because I think we're going to end up with a liability rather than an asset up there, in that people will expect their walls to be made nice and proper like this. Whoever it is that's objected is either very fussy or he were frightened that it was going to be his responsibility. So I think if we can find out whether it is our wall for a start, and if we can find out by the simple method that I've just spoken about, ask the ward councillors to go up and check to see if it has been hit with a car from the other side. And if that is the case, just speak to them and say that we've had a quote for £190 for our wall. Would you please pay it? And I'm sure the ward councillor would be quite prepared to go up there and check it and see the people. And if he wants somebody to go with him, I'll go with him.
Okay, I'm kind of reluctant to burden the ward councillors for the Upper Home Valley when one of them is quite ill with, long COVID, and Councillor Hogley.
It's likely I can go up there over the next week or so and go and try and locate said bit of wall. Obviously, we're not quite sure where it is on the map, so I know where the allotments are. Sorry, we don't know which wall it is. So I'll go and see. If I can't find it, it can't be that damaged, frankly. So, but I'll see what I can find, and I'll take some more photographs of it. But I still think we need to agree the principle of investigating whether it belongs to us, and then
no action to be taken until we get a report back from council.
Okay, right then. So I'll take these proposals one by one. Councillor Hogley is proposing that the clerks investigate the deeds, taking on board Councillor Dixon's advice regarding the inner T or the outer T, for whose responsibility those walls are, and that the so are we all in? Councillor Hogley proposes that. I'll second that as that's a way forward regarding who's responsible. All those in favour? Right. Okay. Second one is regarding the budget side of things. We currently have no budget. Do we believe that if this does need repair and such repairs, that the contingencies budget is the appropriate one? I'm getting a big head shake there from the RFO.
No, we did away with the contingencies line.
We did.
You look at last year's budget, it's not. It won't be in this year's budget.
Thank you for reminding me of that.
Okay.
Councillor Black.
I was just looking back in my papers of tonight's meeting, you see, so that's the most.
Councillor Black, are you scratching your head, or was that raising the pen? No, scratching your head. Okay, so we need to find a budget for, well, I suppose the proposal is that, Councillor Hogley.
I was just going to say, once I've had the opportunity to visit the site, take some photographs, then can I suggest it's delegated to the chair of F&M and the RFO to look at a suitable, assuming that therefore there is a problem that needs solving, to come up with an appropriate place that the money should be wired from, which will then have to be approved at the next full council.
I'll second that. All in favour? That's that. Fine, thank you. And I suppose the third item was, do we need, going forward, do we need to have a budget somewhere for these kind of repairs? If it ever happens again, or something like this happens again, should we have? It hasn't happened in all the time I've been at the parish.
I don't think it's necessary. I think we've to hope that Goodwill and third parties that cause damage pay for the works. So I don't think if the dry stone walls around there are as good as what they should be, they're not likely to be problems unless people are getting very pedantic about it.
Okay. Just give me 1 second.
Funny noises in the Potson household.
Sorry, I'm back. Sorry about that. Sorry about that. I've had to put. Hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all right. I've had to put some earphones on. And someone's entered me just coming from work and started cooking in my kitchen. So I'll get a bit noisy. Okay, so where was I when I left that? We were discussing whether we needed something in the budget for the finance and management for repairs of things like this. Councillor Dixon put forward that we don't because it's infrequent and we shouldn't worry about it. Have we got anybody else like to comment on that? Pat?
Wouldn't most of
Pat
these
Collins?
wouldn't most of these things normally come where maintenance is required, come into either service provision or task generally?
Generally, they
No.
would. Part of me think
Sorry.
normally things of this nature do have a home somewhere else rather than sort of in finance and management, don't they? Like, you know, the pool bags are managed and the pool bag boxes are managed by service provision, aren't they? It's just, I suppose it's the case that the finance and management get directly, the money comes direct to F&M and they have responsibility for the allotments, but generally they don't spend out, do we?
We do sometimes, the maintenance contractor does sometimes repair other people's benches, so it's not unheard of that we actually move outside our
Remit,
strict
yeah,
regime. Yeah.
yeah, silos. Okay, I mean, it'll. Do we propose starting a budget for repairs? Does anyone want to propose that?
I mean, isn't the more sensible thing to have an earmark reserve rather than a budget?
Yes, I think you're right.
Yeah.
Okay, should we have an earmark reserve of a moderate sum of money for such like repairs, infrequent repairs that fall under finance and management? Does someone want to propose that? That's, and then all those in favour. So it was Rachel proposed it, Pat seconded it. All those in favour? Okay. Do we have to agree what that budget's going to be at this point, or will that be up until the next budget round of budgeting?
Well, we can leave it till the next budget, or we can leave it to our discussions in terms of the delegated decision about where this money may come from for this wall. So
yeah, okay, we'll leave it there for the time being and move on from there. But so thank you for everyone for that. And where are we now with regards to consider pension? Yeah. So item 21, 22, 13, statement of intent on training, to receive report on any training by councillors, officers since the last finance and management meeting, attendees to report. So Councillor Conley, I think you may have already reported on the policies, procedures, powers webinar.
Yeah, I did. I think last time it wasn't on the list, but I'd done it the day before and I reported back. And I booked for another one that got cancelled.
Okay,
right.
Thank you for that, Councillor Colleen. RFO, what was your website accessibility regulations 2018? That sounds riveting, that.
It was one of these things which creates lots of extra work for oneself that one didn't realise. It's basically about making your website accessible to people with disabilities. So it's going to involve lots of checking. Every PDF we upload has to follow certain guidelines. Quite a complicated thing that's going to involve quite a bit of work, unfortunately. But I can't say I've started yet, and I'm a bit nervous to start. So I'm a bit concerned that it might take forever. But that's some way down the line.
But you've been to the webinar.
Yeah.
So that's a positive step in the right direction.
Good. Yeah, it was really good and really helpful.
Councillor Dixon.
It serves you right, Richard, for going.
The clerk forced me to go.
Okay.
I knew you were going to blame me.
Okay. Look,
Legal requirement that our website is accessible from last September.
look, we're not going to have against this blame culture. But we need to stamp it out now. Don't need to blame culture. We need to find out who's responsible for it and hold them accountable. Okay, Councillor Hogley.
I was just going to say, I remember some emails after this call when Rich had gone on this course, and I think from memory our website provider was able to do a sort of review of our website, because we've already got an accessibility statement, haven't we? But I thought there was something additional that they could do to review what therefore needed to be done, which presumably will come at a cost. So is the plan, Rich, when you get an opportunity to then review what can be done externally and come to us with a proposal which will have an associated cost, rather than you seeking to do it all yourself?
Oh yeah, I won't be able to do
Yeah,
some of it.
yeah.
There's aspects of it where you have web pages that talk to you and that kind of stuff, which the professionals will have to do. Can't possibly do it. When I was basically, they directed us to some other websites of local councils and showed what they'd done in terms of meeting the requirements, and they had all sorts of fancy stuff in terms of large print and like I say, the web pages that talk to you and stuff like that. So I think that's something that I'll review, and then I'll talk to Vision ICT about it, and it'll be about a bit of extra cash at some point in the future, I suppose.
Okay. Yeah, I think because I know I was sorry, just to make a final comment on it. I know when we had like the consultation documents for neighbourhood development plan, there was kind of the view that you can move towards it by offering the fact if people can't access it, then they can make contact with the clerk, and then you can make other things available, like print something out, large print, for example. But that doesn't preclude from the fact in the long run, we want everything to be accessible to everyone, which we want to move towards. But it may be that it's a staged process to get there. And I think I'm just conscious of the fact that obviously we're going to be appointing a new clerk shortly, and that's quite a burden of work on the deputy clerk when that happens. So we need to be mindful of taking the opportunity to get external assistance in achieving that if we want to do it quickly.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hogley. Okay, and then Councillor Colling, year-end accounts, 11th of March. Did you go on that one, Councillor Colling?
I think that was
so good she can't remember it.
That was the one that was cancelled.
Oh, thank you. That was cancelled. Sorry about that. My apologies. You did say.
And I haven't heard back from the climate emergency coordinator. I don't know whether she's attended this training yet, to be honest.
Okay, there's no date for it, so it may be that it's not occurred yet. That's quite possible.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so item 21, 22, 14, financial records for the website. To note, financial records for February, March 2021 have been uploaded to the council website, accessible from quick links. Are we all noting that?
Noted.
Noted, yep. To note, from April 2021, the RFO will be adding the completed monthly schedule of payments to the website along the other records accessible from quick links. Is that noted by everyone?
Yeah.
Great stuff. Okay. 21, 22, 15, interim budget. To note, the interim internal audit has taken place. The written report was generally positive, but did identify recommended actions for the council for it to continue to improve outcomes and making sure that what we do is in line with best practices. The council's financial regulation scheme of delegation and other policies, the internal audit will be complete on the 1st of June 2021 after completion of the financial accounts. To note, RFO will liaise with the clerk with regard to the internal auditor's recommendations and report to the next meetings of finance and management and full council. As acknowledged by the internal auditor, the parish council have been able to fully implement its system of internal financial controls under lockdown, but we'll be able to establish these things once we are through the lockdown to consider arrangements for undertaking checks of internal controls after lockdown. Have we all managed to have a look at the audit? I thought it was very, very good. I found, it was really good and well put together, and quite an easy read, which I wasn't. When I saw the first page of it, I thought, oh, heck, this is going to be hard work, but it wasn't. I thought it was quite good.
Richard makes things look easier than what they are.
No, this isn't me. This is not me.
This is Miss Salcia Causa.
Right.
But it.
As I've said before about, she's very, very thorough. She's very competent. She's trying to find faults without it being our fault. She's trying to help us to be better at what we're doing, and I think the things she's pointing out are things that where we're going against our own policies, really, that we can quickly remedy by changing the policy, like this the procurement threshold thing, which we've got at £100, and she's just suggesting that we move it up, for example. And she's also pointed out. She's also pointed out with regard to the chairman's allowance that it should be paid as a salary. So these are things that we're all going to have to work through. Yeah, go on, Councillor.
Yeah, I was just thinking. I mean, that's what I wanted to discuss. I'll let you finish your report, and then we'll just have a quick go through the recommendation. So if you want to carry on, Richard, I won't interrupt.
I mean, I didn't really have much more to say. I mean, myself and Liz haven't really got together to actually work through the recommendations. So that's something we'll be doing over the next month or so. But in terms of, you know, I've had an email discussion with Councillor Hogley about the chairman's allowance. I haven't spoken to Ms. Cowser about it. I'll have a word with her before we do anything else. But I think, you know, what it seems is that we've been doing it wrong in terms of paying this £1,000 straight to charities.
Yeah, I've been aware that that's not been quite. From what I gather, the chairman's allowance was an allowance to allow the chairman to attend civic functions where he's, you know, where he will be representing the parish council, where he would, and the allowance was so he wouldn't be there would be no out-of-pocket expenses to them. Yeah. So rather than, could this not be chairman's expenses? Would that get around the PAYE? Because I would be very, very reluctant to become chairman of this council and end up earning £1,000 for that privilege if I didn't end up going to any, you know, you could not go to anything on behalf, you could be a chairman and just not go to anything and end up £1,000 the richer, which I would be very, very reluctant to. Could this not be changed from chairman's allowance to chairman's expenses up to a maximum of £1,000? And would that get around the PAYE and you would just claim it as you needed it? That would be my query. Councillor Dixon.
When I was chairman the first time, I was told the reason for the money was basically to pay for your guests when you had your own civic functions. When you had a civic function, you were invited to other civic functions by other chairmen, and you didn't pay for your ticket. You do, I think what they do now, I think everybody pays for their own tickets, but you got invited to these functions, and then you reciprocated by inviting the other chairman back to your civic function, and basically the money was to pay for that cost. There was also money to pay if you invited the clerk or the deputy clerk, as we had at the time. Their tickets were paid for out of civic funds, and what we used to do was take the money, and in my case I put it into a bank account and then paid checks out for everything when it was necessary to be done. And people that were going to my civic dinner, they all paid for their tickets to me, and then I paid it back. The second time I was chairman, I was told we couldn't do that, it had to be done differently, and the council had to receive all the monies in and pay for the civic function. That is where it all used to be. The money that was given away to charities was money that was raised at these civic functions, and it was charitable donations by people at those functions, raffle tickets, whatever, and that was the money that was given away to charities. It was only when one of the councillors decided that they didn't want a civic function, they weren't going to anything. But then when I went to a civic function away somewhere, found out they were there, and they were going and having meals on the other people's councils, but then not reciprocating and inviting people back, which was rather bad PR at the time, and I let it be known. And I got accused of being rather provocative, but it was right. And I don't think the councils have the functions like they did. So the need for a chairman's allowance isn't now as important as it was. It was so that everybody had the opportunity to be chairman. If the person had lots of money, they could stand it themselves if they wished. But it was that the poor man of the council could be chairman and not be out of pocket.
Thank you for that valuable contribution, Councillor Dixon. Very informative. Councillor Hall.
Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, I totally agree with what Councillor Dixon says. I know first time I was chairman, we were finding that we'd nearly a function nearly every week or every other week. As the years have gone by, tradition's sort of gone out of the window. And I think we've all noticed that functions and ceremonies and dinners and civic Sundays have just ceased to be. I know these last 12 months has been practically impossible, even if you'd wanted to have civic Sundays or civic dinners, it just hasn't been possible. So I do think that we are onto a different trend now. We're no longer traditional council like we used to be. And I think the time has come for us to possibly update and see just what we can and cannot do regarding this allowance, whether it is, as Councillor Dixon said, that it just goes by the by and it's just paid through council. But a set figure should be allowed. And I think, as I say, I think now's the time for it to be reassessed and sorted once and for all, because as far as I can see, we're not going to go back to what it was in the good old days. More's the picture.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hall. Has anybody else got any comments regarding the chairman's allowance while we're discussing it? Okay, can I, Councillor Hogley?
Sorry, I was just going to make one quick point because it's something I raised with Rich when I exchanged emails on it, which was just, I think I was conscious because in recent years seems to have been used for charitable donations. My view was that if the allowance was still in place, I don't question the need to review the allowance and its purpose and that sort of thing, and I'm quite happy with that. And if that affects the allowance that I've had this year, then that's fine. But my thought was that for my monies, I would, if they were my monies, if you see what I mean, I'd be wanting to put them towards a project within the Home Valley, which would be led by the parish council. So I've got one in mind, but rather than giving it to a charity, it would be something that the parish council did.
Okay, thank you for that, Rachel. I mean, I consider that these are recommendations going forward and not something that will be retrospective. So in some ways, I suppose, Councillor Hogley, you know, what you do with your allowance as is what you do with your allowance as is. Going forward, I think we do need to sort out what that is. I mean, I'd be quite happy if there was chairman's expenses, that if he did attend any civic functions or they did attend any civic functions, to ensure that they weren't out-of-pocket expenses, there was a mechanism for them to claim those back, you know, reasonable out-of-pocket expenses. However, whether, you know, I wouldn't want £1,000, you know, do I get £1,000 paid on a monthly, or is it all one lump sum and PAYE, and I have to go and declare that with me, you know, it's just a lot of things I think would put a lot of people off doing it. I don't think anyone wants to become chair to earn £1,000, but I do think people will be quite wish to claim back out of pocket expenses indeed in being a chairman if there were, you know, civic functions above and beyond being a normal councillor. So is that something we can query with the with Ms. Causer?
Yeah, of course.
Whether that will be possible. Councillor Dixon?
Could it be that £1,000 be an amount of money which is in the budget, and whoever the chairman be, that they get, as Michael said, out-of-pocket expenses for anything that incurs up to that maximum of £1,000, and once that £1,000 has been spent, if they need to go for further funding, it's got to come back to this committee. But if we have £1,000 allowance in there, it isn't £1,000 which is going to the person that's liable to be paying tax on it. It is there for the purpose of the chairman's expenses during his year in office. And if we leave £1,000 in a budget, and it's the chairman has then got to apply for these amounts, rather than give it away to charity, the charitable existence, as I recollect it, used to be what you raise at your functions. And so if we can do it, that nobody is implemented, we don't want anybody to not be chairman because they can't afford to do it. It was so that everybody could afford to be a chairman, and that there's an allowance up to £1,000 to be spent whichever way is necessary, whether it's for evening suits or things like that, so they can go to functions if they haven't got that apparel, and then we give everybody a chance.
Thank you for that,
So
Councillor Dixon.
if you do that and put the money into account, whether it's spent or not.
Thank you for that, Councillor Dixon. Councillor Colling?
I think going back to your suggestion, could we have an earmarked reserve called something like expenditure, chairman's expenditure or chairman's expenses, which is drawn upon as it's needed, and that might be bits of travelling, it might be a bit of reciprocal entertainment, it can be, but they would make a claim like anybody else would. I spent this, it cost this, here's my receipt. And that way it's not an income and it's not taxable.
No, it's just what I said. That's just what I was saying.
But if it's an earmarked reserve, can we call it, Rich? Can we call it an earmarked reserve?
Well, it would be a budget, wouldn't it?
Rather than chair's allowance.
Yeah, well, I think that's the problem, isn't it? It's the word allowance, I think, that's messing things up. I think, like Councillor Pogson is saying, if it's listed as expenses, then there's probably, that would seem to be easily solved, I would suggest. I will ask Safia for her opinion on that, but
Councillor Davis.
I agree with the principle that that we've been discussing about moving it away from allowance, and certainly absolutely with you, Councillor Pogson, about it not being a salary. I think the only thing I was going to say, Rich, is just to double check what are taxable benefits. Obviously, it depends on your personal circumstances, and if we have a chair who is employed and paying tax, etc., then some of the things may well be regarded by HMRC as taxable. It's a small point, and I don't think it's going to, but I'm sure she'll be able to give you a view on that. But I'd agree with the principle that's been outlined. I think it makes perfect sense that we'd have a budget, as Councillor Dixon said, to make sure that any chairman is not out of pocket and can afford to carry out the duties.
It shouldn't preclude anybody from taking the honour.
Yep.
Thank you for that. So if we can ask the RFO to go back and just clarify if we can change to an expenses model rather than an allowance model, would that, and what the implications of that would be that we've not considered, if that's possible. Has anyone looking at the other recommendations on this, the ones in blue on the last page of it, Appendix A, has anyone got anything else they would like to raise so the RFO can take them up with Sassia just to clarify and where we go with it? Rachel?
Yeah, there was one thing about the receipts that were expected from, I don't know, it's in section 5.18, where it talks about grant awards. RFO should ensure an expenditure audit form is returned with accompanying receipts within 3 to 6 months of the grant expenditure incurred. Now, from memory, when we sent out grants historically, obviously we just did it with a check and a letter, and then you had to sign the bit at the bottom of the letter that said, I received this grant on behalf of whoever it is, and it is for the purposes of, and it was what was already pre-printed by the parish council, so you were confirming that you were going to spend it on that. You were never then asked for receipts of how much you actually spent, because the presumption was that that money was going towards what you'd said it was going towards, and you would then you'd then write, well, what you should do, and I know not everybody ever did this, but should then send in your report of what you spent the money on and how the project went or whatever. But I'm conscious that it's slightly different if we're asking people for receipts of what they've spent, and I think it comes back to that whole issue of, are we giving people a grant for, they give estimates of how much they're going to spend and what they're asking for a contribution towards. How are we then expecting them to come back? And if they say only the things that we contributed towards cost £98.99, do we want them to then return the £1.01 because we'd given them £100? I just don't know. I was just a bit uncomfortable by what we meant by receipts for all the grants, or whether it was just a receipt for the grant in its entirety.
I think in its entirety, I agree with you. We can't be chasing for, receipts for £25. It's a bit disrespectful.
And I guess those organisations will want the receipts for their own accounting. Councillor Blacker.
I mean, it is. I've written a lot of grants over the years, and I mean, it is quite common practice for grant awarding bodies to actually ask for receipts, but it is an absolute total pain when it's a very, very small, very, very small amount. I can't, maybe we could ask for them to to make a statement of what they've actually spent, and then request whether the council wants the money back. And in my experience, funding bodies never really want the money back because it causes enormous problems. But it does seem a bit, the procedure at the moment does seem a bit lax, really. So I do think a little tightening up might not be a bad idea.
In between, yeah. Councillor Culling.
I think we might, I agree with what everybody said, that we shouldn't be, it's too much trouble to be chasing receipts from everybody, but it might be that we should, when those grants have been made to things that we own, like the Civic Centre, and there was a big discussion at the last full council about the expenditure on the Civic Centre and the grants they were given, and so it's a bit different when it's our own than when it's other people's.
Thank you, Councillor Culling. Councillor Hall. Sorry, Councillor Hall, I think you've double muted yourself, if you could. Yes, we can hear you now.
Can you hear me now?
We can. Great stuff.
Where was I? I think I agree with what's been said by past councillors, but I do think that it would be nice if we just got a resume of what the money had been spent on. Not necessarily send the receipts in, but as a way of them thanking us. I know in the past that we do get thank you letters for everything, but just a short item of what's been spent would, I think, be very beneficial to us. And I think it would help us in our views on how we forward on with future grants. And as I say, I don't think it's too much time consuming, and I don't think it's too much of an effort to ask people to respond in that way. Thank you.
Yeah, Councillor Dixon.
The letter of the law says do this, do that. It's to counteract, we're only a little fish, but it's to counteract the big fish where there could potentially be a fraud. And they're claiming money for things and using it for something other than what was accepted. The problem I think that we have as a council is that we look at the amounts of money tonight for various, and they put down individual things, but we are paying a proportion, and it's sometimes it might be a tenth of the whole cost of a certain scheme, and they're getting grants from other parties and other people besides, and we can't get a receipt. We can get a receipt for a tenth of it, but we can't get a receipt for what we've given the grant for.
Yep,
if we're awarding the grant to a group of people that are doing a particular function, that's fine, but we can't get a receipt for it all, or it could be just an integral part what we're just providing a service for.
Okay, yeah, I quite agree, Councillor Dixon. So, was anyone else? I think on that point, we're going to ask the RFO to just check with Ms. Causa whether a declaration of what money was spent on and that it was spent on the project that the grant was applied for, would that suffice? Or
I think we'd like to know our interpretation of it, Michael.
Yes, yes,
yeah.
How that could be interpreted. Councillor Davis.
Yeah, I think just as you just said there, something from the organisation signed by the officers of that organisation. And I think that, you know, because the grants we give in are to recognised groups, aren't they?
Yeah.
So they generally have a constitution and they have officers, and that would at least give us something, wouldn't it? You know, in that regard.
And I suppose something along the lines of, you know, we spent so much money on what have you, and this went towards this project, so overall budget of this. All the receipts for this project have been kept by the organisation and retained. You know, something of that nature. So if ever someone wanted to audit it, where did your tenth of that cost go to? Well, the organisation themselves have retained the receipt, so whatever. But I think some clarification from Ms. Causa would help.
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah, well, I'm going to basically ask her what what form she's used, and I mean we've stolen so many forms from her already that I would just steal another one and see how it works basically.
I think the only other one.
If you don't get put in prison, Richard, you carry on pinching them.
I think the procurement threshold is quite a valid.
Yeah.
You know, to move that from £100 up to 3,000 to go for, you know, I think that's quite valid, but I think that'll be, I suppose we'll address that at a later date, won't we, and change our standing orders to reflect that,
Yeah.
possibly, or that'll come forward to full council at some point. Has anyone got any other, Councillor Hogley?
So the only other one was the credit/charge card needing to be set up, which was under 5.21.
Is that ongoing?
This has sort of been, kicked around for ages. So I just wondered that, I mean, that seems to support the principle that it is possible and the appropriate safeguards. So I just wondered where we'd got to in that process, because again, I know there's been some emails around that as well, but not since the audit.
Yeah, well, Liz has been speaking to Handelsbank and has got arrangements basically going forward. I think part of the problem was it being with Handelsbanken, who we haven't fully committed to staying with. So that was part of the issue with that.
Which bank we're going to have it with?
Yeah. So, I mean, our intent was to bring it to next council, I think was the plan. We just kind of ran out of time with this one.
Okay, but it is ongoing and hopefully we will get there.
Yeah.
Okay. Has anybody got anything else on them recommendations they'd like to, just any clarification from Ms. Cowser for the RFO to go back to? So other than that, have we got anything else to action this meeting that we need to go regarding the internal audit?
I wonder, can I just ask Rich what he thought about outsourcing the payroll? Because that is one way of saving a bit of time for you.
Yeah, I mean, I did. Yeah, this was suggested at some training I did as well, basically to remove me from paying myself. You know, where you know, that training where I was on, where they said, "Have you ever been bothered about the fact that you pay yourself?" And that was one of the reasons they got round this. And obviously, it also helps in terms of confidentiality of not knowing how much your colleagues are paid. So I'm certainly not against it. It's just one of those things, as we've never done it, it's whether the trade-off in terms of cost is beneficial.
Richard, I think it's only fair. Everybody in every business that does the payroll pay themselves. So I don't think it's anything other than that. And I don't want to see you having to go outside to get an external person to do the payrolls just for that reason, and carry on doing what you're doing as long as you're taking what you're entitled to and nothing other than that. You've nothing to worry about, and your job's how it is. It's part of your job.
Councillor Blacker.
I would suggest that this option is explored to find out how much it's going to cost to do this. And I know it is common practice for other organisations, including charitable organisations, to have their payroll managed by Kirklees. So yeah, I think it's definitely worth exploring.
Other payroll managers, management companies are available. Councillor Hogley.
I'd echo what Councillor Blacker said, not least because we're sort of going through a workload of the clerk and deputy clerk review at the moment anyway, so I think it makes sense for that to be considered. I don't know how much of your time is taken up doing the payroll element, but if it's something that potentially can be neatly outsourced, then it's something we need to at least understand the implications and costs thereof.
Councillor Davies.
Yeah, I think it's definitely worth exploring. I take Councillor Dixon's point. I don't believe any of us feel that there's an issue in terms of competency or anything like that. But I think two for one, as Councillor Hogley said, around workload. But again, I think also useful to have another set of eyes on one element of our finances. So again, I think that's useful. That means that we, when it comes to audits, etc., I think that just makes life a little bit easier and more straightforward as well. But I think all those two things combined, yeah, worth exploring.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's questioning the integrity of the RFO, but I think going forward, it may be an idea to explore the possibility of outsourcing the payroll to another organisation. And if there was a cost benefit, I think we'd have to have a look at it, i.e. if it costs less than the officer time involved in sorting out the payroll, then that would be something that the council need to explore. It could help with workload, but so I think it's something we should explore. But I wouldn't make a decision yet.
Taking a job off him, you're going to give him a pay cut, and that's not fair.
Yeah. Your comments are noted, Paul, Councillor Dixon. I don't necessarily agree with them, but I think they are noted and they are on the record.
Yeah, but it is a fact that if somebody's going to be having reduced hours, they don't get paid as much. And if it's going to take you're taking a job off him, that's part of the scenario. I don't think it's fair.
We are undergoing a current workload review of our staff, and so it would be, I'd be interested to see where, you know, whether a reduction in hours would it all be possible. I somehow doubt it. However, is there anyone else regarding this audit? Have anyone got anything further to query about it? Anything like that? Are we okay with it? Okay, great stuff. Right. Okay, 21, 22, 16, budget for flowers, cards, and so on councillors. So there have been a few payments made in last years towards flowers and cards for councillors who are suffering illness, had a baby, for ex-councillors who have passed away. The council does not currently have a clear provision in its budget for such items. Consider how to manage such expenditure. I think it's, as a parish council, I think it's only inevitable that we will have such matters coming forward, and where we would want to send a card or something like that, and there should be a mechanism of paying for it. Councillor Dixon.
It's what we had petty cash for, and we've done away with it. Petty cash always paid for things of this nature, and it would always come out of there.
Okay, RFO, have you got any suggestions?
I mean, we still have that, the budget. You know, the budget line still exists. You know, it's just not petty cash anymore. There is a budget line. It's just that everything we spend has to have a kind of legal underpinning, and it's kind of,
yeah.
I don't quite know what legal underpinning would be.
Okay, does Miss Cowser have a suggestion? Has this been put to her? Where we should go with this?
No,
if it comes to each of the councillors chipping in £1 a year to cover the cards and what have you, then that might have to be it.
I will ask her, see what she says.
It should come from the councillors, because it's not public. This is public money, and you're actually contributing to other people's presence. And I don't think that's really doesn't come under any of the budget headings. So I think it would be a good idea to have a slush fund that you've all contributed to.
Councillor Hogley and then Councillor Davis.
I know we've just had a lengthy discussion about the chairman's allowance, but if it's going to come out of anywhere, that feels like the most logical place in terms of its expense associated with being chair of the council, in terms of then on behalf of the council, those purchases are made. So I feel that there's potential for it to be included within that. I'm not against the principle of people chipping in, but I think there'll be a whole issue of what happens when someone leaves the council and somebody else, you know, when people change or resign or whatever. So that might be a bit. So it would have to be a voluntary thing for people to do. But I do think in the short term, potentially the chairman's allowance could be used.
I think
that is what we've used. But I think the problem is what Rich is saying is it doesn't have a budget. It doesn't have a reason to spend. There's no heading against which we can use that money, or can we just use it, Rich, without any?
Well, I mean, there's
definition.
Section 111 is very, very broad, and you can essentially use it for lots of things. You know, depending on how liberal you are with how you use it. So, I mean, there's some sort of justification for that, I suppose. I do think, you know, if a councillor is ill, I do think it's a good thing that it comes from the council. You know, not just from individuals, because it's so complicated getting people to contribute, isn't it? And people miss out, and you know, I do think there's a facility should be there for it personally.
Yeah, I personally think that like the body of the council may want to send their condolences, congratulations, or sympathies, or whatever. But individual councillors themselves may want to send something as well, and that's up to them, and that's their choice. But I think the body of the council itself would wish to send something, and I think possibly, like, if we change the chairman's allowances to expenses, I mean, I would be quite happy as a chair of the council to spend those expenses on such items, you know, going forward. Councillor Davis?
Yeah, I think Rich sort of more or less answered my sort of point I was going to raise, but I think this is all about reasonableness, isn't it? And as you say, if you got the chairman's allowance, you know, as long as it's reasonable, you know, and there's not something silly happening in terms of, you know, people having, you know, £500 leaving gifts, etc. Then, you know, it's about that, isn't it? And I think it's just finding a mechanism. But the point I was going to ask was about the legal side of it, and I think you've answered that, Rich, by saying that regulation gives you enough breadth to do that. I think that's the key thing. What we don't want to be, well, maybe it's worth checking. What we don't want to be is you know, pulled over the coals for something daft like just giving, you know, bouquets of flowers to people, and some sort of, it would be silly, wouldn't it? You know, if we break regulations for something like that. So it's just checking that. But I think as long as it's reasonable, I don't see why it shouldn't come from expenses, the chairman's expenses.
Councillor Dixon?
As long as we don't get a pandemic of councillors or ex-councillors dying of a pandemic, and one chairman having to fork out a fortune to send flowers to all and sundry, I don't think it's going to be a serious amount of money anytime. And if it does get excessive, if we can then refer it to some other source, if it is making a problem for the chairman of the day.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, that's kind of that item. I think we've got a concept where we're going forward. We just need to check out when we look at with Ms. Cowser whether the chairman's allowances can become chairman's expenses, and that get around the PAYE, and what there would there be any restrictions on them spending it on such things as cards and possibly flowers for a passed away previous councillor. Yeah. Okay. So do we need to vote on that? Are we all right? Do we need to vote on that? Or are we just asking council to explore and then we'll implement it at a later date? Yeah, I think we noted. Yeah. 21, 22, 17 representation to report if any representative to outside bodies. Has anybody been anywhere to anybody outside bodies? Have we received any reports from outside of this committee from anyone who's been to any outside bodies?
We have not.
No, we haven't. All quiet on the Western Front then. Okay then, so in that case, I will close this meeting. Sorry I've overrun by 22 minutes. I do apologise.
You were doing well at one time, Michael.
We're doing so well. We're doing so well. So well, I do apologise. Thank you very, very much for your attendance and all your valid contributions. Thank you very much. It's been great to see you all, and all take care. Have a good bank holiday weekend.
Bye.
Thank you, Chair.
Bye now. Bye.